She packed her bags and held her heart in her hands. He never looked up. The last night she'd ever begged for his attention, the penthouse was quiet in that expensive way. The kind of silence that only money could buy. 42 floors above Manhattan, the city blazed like a circuit board, all glass and ambition and cold light. Inside, the furniture was Italian, the floors were obsidian marble, and the man sitting near the window hadn't spoken in 11 minutes. Kara had counted. She stood near the floor-to-ceiling glass, her fingers wrapped around a small red velvet heart, a silly little Valentine's gift she'd bought herself 3 years ago when she realized no one else was going to. Her rolling suitcase sat beside her like a loyal dog that understood what she was doing, even if the man across the room didn't. Marcus Hale, billionaire, Forbes cover, her best friend since they were broke college kids sharing a busted microwave in a Baltimore apartment, was staring at his phone. "Marcus," she said. She waited. He scrolled. Kara set her jaw. It had started, like most disasters, with a business deal. 14 months ago, Marcus had come to her with a problem. His grandfather's will had a clause, one of those old money, old-fashioned conditions that seemed almost comedic in modern times, to inherit the Hale family estate in Connecticut, the full portfolio of real estate holdings, and the controlling shares of Hale Capital. Marcus needed to be married before his 38th birthday, 60 days away. He'd called Kara at 2 a.m, voice calm in that way that meant he was quietly panicking. "I need a favor," he'd said. She'd laughed. "Marcus, whatever it is, the answer is probably no. $20 million. Silence. "I need a wife," he'd continued. "Temporary, completely legal contract, 1 year. You walk away with $20 million, no strings attached. The estate transfers, the board is satisfied, and we both move on with our lives." Kara had stared at her ceiling for a long moment. "You couldn't find one single actual girlfriend to do this?" she'd asked. "I don't trust anyone like I trust you." And that, she would later understand, was the cruelest sentence she had ever heard. Because it was true, and because he meant it the way you mean it about a business partner, not the way she needed him to mean it. She'd said yes. The contract had been clean. 2 attorneys, 12 pages, ironclad confidentiality. They'd married at a courthouse on a Tuesday, with his assistant and her cousin as witnesses. She'd worn a cream blazer, he'd worn a navy suit. There had been no flowers. Afterward, he'd taken her to lunch and ordered her favorite, shrimp tacos, and said, "Thank you, Kara. Genuinely, this means everything." She'd smiled and said, "That's what best friends are for." She was already halfway in love with him. By month 3, she was completely gone. It happened in the small moments, the ones no contract could have predicted. Marcus, who was ruthlessly efficient in every boardroom on earth, was completely helpless at grocery stores. He'd text her photos of items with question marks. "This one or this one," she'd respond. He'd send a thumbs up. It was idiotic and domestic, and she looked forward to it more than any meeting she had that week. He remembered things. That was his most dangerous quality. He remembered that she hated cilantro, that her mother had died on a February afternoon, that she always got quiet when she was overwhelmed. Not loud, not dramatic, just quiet. And he'd learned, somewhere along the way, to sit beside her in that quiet without asking her to explain it. He made her laugh harder than anyone she'd ever known. And he looked at her sometimes, just briefly, just a flash, like she was the only solid thing in a room full of moving pieces. But he never said anything, and neither did she. Month 6, they'd attended his cousin's wedding in Charleston. Kara had worn a green silk dress, and Marcus had looked at her when she walked down the stairs and gone completely still for 3 full seconds before recovering and saying, "You look great. Ready?" She'd nodded. Great. She looked great, like a spreadsheet that had formatted correctly. At the reception, she'd danced with his uncle, laughed with his cousins, and somehow, without planning it, become the kind of woman that his family already loved. His aunt had pulled her aside near the end of the night and said, "I don't know where Marcus found you, honey, but don't let him be stupid enough to lose you." Kara had smiled so hard her face hurt. In the car home, Marcus had been quiet for a while, then said, "They really like you. Good people," she'd said. "Yeah." A pause. "Thank you for tonight. You didn't have to be so, you." She turned to look at him in the dark back seat. "What does that mean?" He'd shrugged, eyes on the passing streetlights. You make everything feel real, he'd said, even when it isn't. She turned back to her window before he could see her expression. Month 9, she'd made a mistake. It was a Thursday evening, both of them in the kitchen. Her making pasta, him going through contracts at the island, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, glasses on. He only wore glasses at home. She was the only person outside his optometrist who knew that. He'd laughed at something she said. Really laughed, that unguarded sound he only made when he forgot to be Marcus Hale. And she'd turned from the stove and looked at him and thought, I am not going to survive this. I don't want the $20 million. I want him. She'd turned back to the pasta before the thought could get any louder. But it was already too loud. Month 11. She'd told her best friend Jordan over coffee, and Jordan had looked at her for a long moment and said, Kara, you have to tell him. I can't. Why? Because if I tell him and he doesn't feel it, I lose him, and I would rather have him as my best friend for the rest of my life than lose him completely. Jordan had wrapped both hands around her mug and said quietly, and if he does feel it? Kara hadn't answered, because that was the terrifying part. Not the rejection, the possibility. The contract ended in 30 days. She'd hired a moving company, started transferring her things back to her own apartment slowly, quietly, so he wouldn't notice, and ask questions she didn't have clean answers to. She'd practiced her exit speech 12 times in the shower. It's been a great year. I'm grateful. You're my best friend, and that's what matters. Good luck with the estate. 12 times. She still couldn't get through it without her voice going wrong at the end. Tonight, she'd come to tell him she was leaving 2 weeks early. She'd come with her suitcase and her velvet heart and a whole speech, and he was sitting there, in the glow of his phone, and he hadn't looked up. Marcus, she said again. Sorry, 1 second. He held up a finger. She looked at the city behind her. All those lit windows. All those lives. She'd picked up the little red heart off the side table on her way in. She'd left it here weeks ago and forgotten it, and now she was holding it like evidence of something she couldn't name. 1 more minute, she told herself, then you go. The phone clicked down on the table. He looked up, and whatever he saw on her face, the suitcase, the heart, the expression she'd failed to control, made him go very still. What's wrong? He asked. Nothing, she said. I'm going to head back early, to my place, start getting settled again before the contract ends in 2 weeks. I know, I just thought, Kara. Known him long enough to hear every register of it, and this one she couldn't categorize. He stood up. What is that? He nodded at her hand. She looked down at the red velvet heart.
It's nothing. Silly thing, it doesn't matter. He crossed the room in 4 steps and she held her ground through sheer force of stubbornness.
He stopped in front of her, too close, the way he never stood. I need to tell you something, he said. Marcus, I've been trying to figure out how to say this for 4 months, he said. And I'm not going to wait until the contract ends to say it, because I already wasted 14 months being an idiot and I don't have more time to waste. The city blazed behind her. She couldn't breathe. I don't want you to go back to your apartment, he said. I don't want the contract to end. I don't want the version of this where you're my best friend, who helped me out and got $20 million and moved on. He paused. I want the version where you stay. Marcus, not because of the estate, not because of the board. He looked at her, really looked, the way he had in Charleston, but longer this time, no recovering, no looking away. Because I can't remember how to be in this apartment without you in it, and I don't want to learn. Kara looked at him for a long moment. Then she set the velvet heart on his chest, her palm flat against it. You are, she said quietly, the most emotionally slow man I have ever known in my entire life. Something shifted in his face, relief, and something that looked almost like joy. I know, he said. 4 months, she said. I know. I've been in love with you for 11. The city lights burned behind them. He covered her hand with his, the one still holding the heart against his chest. And he didn't say anything for a moment, because Marcus Hale, who could negotiate a merger in 40 minutes, apparently had no words for this. Then,
Stay.
she looked at him.
Okay.
She said. The suitcase stayed by the window, unpacked. Outside, Manhattan blazed on, indifferent and magnificent. 42 floors below, two people who had almost let paperwork decide their lives, and chosen, at the last possible moment, to be brave instead. Some contracts, it turns out, are just the universe's way of buying you enough time to figure out what you actually want.